It all started with a knock I wasn't expecting. Loud, sharp, and way too confident for someone who didn't live here. I peeked through the peephole, and there she was. You probably already guessed Jeep, the infamous HOA Karen. Clipboard in one hand, key in the other, and a look on her face like she owned the entire block. She didn't just think she had authority, she lived like it. But here's the twist, she believed her HOA master key would open my front door. Spoiler alert, it DN single quotes. Now, I wish I could say that was the end of it. But when the key didn't work, instead of walking away like a normal person, Karen doubled down. She started banging louder, demanding I open up, insisting I was unauthorized to be in my own home. Before I could even say a word, she stepped off the porch, pulled out her phone. And this part still blows my mind, called 111. Told them there was a suspicious person inside me. In my house now. I don't know about you, but when someone uses emergency services like that over a door that wouldn't open for them, it's more than just annoying, it's dangerous. But here's where things took a turn she definitely didn't expect. Because instead of sitting back and waiting for officers to show up and explain my own existence, I did something a little different. I called the dispatcher myself. Yep. Direct line. Let me tell you. The silence on her face when she realized what was happening, priceless. But just when I thought this wild HOA moment was over, something even more unbelievable happened. And no, this isn't one of those it all worked out endings. It didn't. Not yet. So what exactly did Karen do next when her plans started unraveling in real time? And how did the dispatcher respond when I gave them the full picture before the officers even showed up? Let's just say, this story only gets crazier from here. Now, here's the part that'll really make you question how far someone can take a power trip. See, this wasn't the first time HOA Karen had tried to check in on me. A few weeks earlier, she left a note taped to my door, typed out, not handwritten. By the way, saying my porch plants weren't uniform with the neighborhood aesthetic. I thought it was just a weird, nosy neighbor thing. But now it's clear that she was watching a little too closely for comfort. I live in a townhouse, and while the HOA does have rules, they definitely don't involve forcing entry with some outdated key from a community LOCKBOX. So back to that moment. While she's standing on the sidewalk, fake whispering into her phone, I'm inside, calmly calling the local dispatcher myself. I explained who I was, gave them my address, even told them which officer I'd met during my move-in inspection. The dispatcher was surprisingly understanding and professional, but I could tell from her tone that Karen had already framed the situation as something serious. Like I was squatting or trying to break in. That was when I realized this wasn't just an inconvenience. This was an attempt to turn the system against me, and fast. I stayed by the window, watching Karen pacing with her phone pressed dramatically to her ear, like she was on some kind of TV show. Then she started pointing at my windows and mouthing words to a neighbor across the street. I couldn't hear her, but I could tell it wasn't friendly. Suddenly, that neighbor came out and stood at the edge of their lawn, arms crossed, also watching me. Just like that, I wasn't just a resident anymore, was a problem. And the worst part? I still had no idea how Karen even got a key in the first place. Who gave it to her? Why did she think she had the right to use it? And was this something she'd done to other neighbors too? I had a gut feeling this wasn't her first time playing sheriff. But it might be the first time she picked the wrong house. And then they saw the patrol car turn onto my street. The patrol car rolled slowly down the street, like it already knew this wasn't going to be a routine stop. Karen spotted it before I did, and immediately waved her arms like she was guiding in a plane. You'd think she was the one who called for backup, not for a bogus, suspicious activity claim. She rushed to meet the officer before he could even step out, talking fast, pointing at my house. doing that fake concerned head tilt like she was some kind of hero looking out for the neighborhood. Meanwhile, I stayed put behind the blinds, heart racing but calm on the outside. I wasn't hiding. I just wanted to see how far she was willing to take this. Now, from inside, I couldn't hear what she was saying. But I could tell from the officer's face that he wasn't exactly buying. He looked back at my house, then down at his notes. And I'm guessing that was the moment the dispatcher had already briefed him about my call. Karen's animated gestures slowed a bit. She started looking over her shoulder, less confident, but still pushing her story hard. And that's when another layer of this whole mess unfolded, because as the officer finally approached my front door, another neighbor, someone I hadn't even spoken to before, came walking over from 2 doors down. She was older, quiet-looking, and had a small dog on a leash. But instead of minding her business, she joined in, telling the officer that she had noticed unusual activity in my home too. That one hit me. Unusual activity. I'd only lived there a few months. I mostly kept to myself. How was that suspicious? What was starting to unfold wasn't just Karen being nosy, was a neighborhood narrative forming against me, like a game of telephone, except instead of a funny story getting twisted, it was my identity. My right to be in my own house being quietly questioned. As the officer reached for my doorbell, my phone buzzed. It was the dispatcher again. That call changed everything. But what she told me next. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. The moment I answered the call from the dispatcher, everything around me slowed down. Her voice was steady but serious. She said, "Just so you're aware, the officer has been updated on the situation, but you should still be ready to identify yourself clearly." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Then she added something that made my stomach drop. The woman who called in. She told us she was acting on behalf of the HOA president. But we've got no record of that name in our files. Karen wasn't just stretching the truth, she might have been pretending to be someone she wasn't. And now, with a second neighbor backing her up and the officer standing at my door, everything was on the edge of tipping in the wrong direction. I took a deep breath, opened the door slowly, and stepped out. The officer looked at me calmly, but his hand hovered near his belt, not aggressive, just cautious. Karen, of course, jumped right back into the conversation, cutting me off before I even got a word in. "That's him," she said, pointing straight at me. "He moved in without board approval, and I think he's using someone else's key. The HOA gave us keys to check on vacant units, and this one wasn't supposed to be occupied." Vacant? That's when I realized Karen really thought I wasn't supposed to be there. Or at least, that's the lie she was committed to. I pulled out my ID and my lease agreement, already printed and ready in a folder by the door. But before I could hand them over, the officer held up a hand to pause me and look straight at Karen. "Ma'am," he said, "I just need to confirm a few details with you. You said the HOA authorized you to enter this property." She hesitated. For the first time, she didn't have a quick answer. And then, from behind the officer, a third person stepped onto the sidewalk, a man in a business shirt holding a folder of his own. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked up slowly and looked right at Karen. That's when things really started to unravel. The man with the folder walked up slowly, calm, but with a purpose. He glanced at the officer, nodded, and then looked directly at Karen. "You're not authorized to represent the HOA," he said plainly. His voice was firm, but even. "I'm Jason, the actual HOA president. I got a call from the property management company about a reported break-in at one of our listed addresses. Imagine my surprise when I saw it was your name attached to the complaint." Karen's entire expression shifted. She opened her mouth like she had something ready, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted between Jason and the officer clearly, scrambling for a new angle. The neighbor with the dog took a few quiet steps back, suddenly very uninterested in being part of the scene. Jason continued, "We haven't used master keys in over a year. You know that? All access is coordinated through management, and even they don't have permission to enter without prior notice to the resident. So where exactly did you get that key?" That's when it hit me. Karen had an old key, maybe from someone who used to work for the HOA or from a lockbox she was never supposed to touch. Either way, she wasn't just being nosy anymore. This was now about unauthorized access, possibly even attempted entry. The officer's entire posture changed. He stepped between me and Karen, not aggressive, but more alert. "I need everyone to stay where they are while I sort this out," he said. Karen, suddenly sweating, mumbled something about just trying to help, but no one was listening anymore. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from the leasing office. They'd been contacted by the police, and they wanted to speak with me immediately. That's when I realized this wasn't just a neighbor issue or a misunderstanding. This could affect my standing with the HOA, my lease, even my security. And just when I thought the spotlight was shifting off me, Jason opened his folder and pulled out a printed email.